I'll get the old.
This is good. See, out there they're trucking. Here we can just do it.
Hi guys, and welcome to NERG. Just before we get started, a quick request please. It's absolutely fine if you want to take photos and videos, that's absolutely fine. However, can I please ask that we do not have any live streams of this interview. Just would like to keep it as natural as we possibly can, and things can be swayed either way sometimes, so it's easier just, like I say, photos and videos fine, live stream, no thank you, if that's all right. So my name is Lindsay. I am the host this afternoon, so I will be conducting the interview with my guest, who I will introduce in a second. I'll also be coming out in the crowd a little bit later, and we'll doing some Q&A with you guys as well. So I'm a little bit nervous, I'm not going to lie. So we'll start from the beginning. It's the blue suit, I think. Welcome everybody to NERG 2023. Is everybody having a good day today? Yeah? Everybody enjoying it? Yeah? Pinball machines. We've got more pinball machines than we've ever had downstairs before, so hope everybody's been making very good use of it. I will be heading back downstairs later on, and I will be happy to have games on House of the Dead and any of the beat-em-ups if anybody fancies a challenge. I show no mercy. So, as you may have seen, I've been joined at the table by these two lovelies, and I'll start, first off, introducing the founder of Twin Galaxies. Oh, this is why I'm nervous. And the Walter Day trading card collection. Walter Day, can I have a round of applause for Walter, please? Thank you very much, Walter. And to my right, a man who needs absolutely no introduction at all, but I'll do it anyway. He is the world record holding. He is notorious when it comes to retro video gaming, and he is a man that has paved the way for many that have followed behind. Can I have a massive round of applause, please, for Billy Mitchell? So I think the reason that I'm as nervous here today is because this does not happen very often at all, where we've got Billy Ilney pushing right up to the top, I think. Give it one more click. Is it on?
Sure.
One more click. There we go.
You sure you want me to speak? What I would like her to do, we met last night.
We did.
And I said, I don't do interviews. And I said, you do not want to interview me.
No.
I am
exactly
an
what you said.
extremely difficult person to interview because I make the so-called journalist, and she said she was not. So
I'm
she's
not a
offended.
journalist.
So-called reporter, which she said she's not. She's just being friendly. I make them do their job. You know, you just throw out a random question or rumor or accusation, and you want me to comment on it, you don't get a comment. It's not worthy of it. But you do your research, and then you ask for clarity, then I'll tell you whatever you want. So I put her to the test last night on a number of things, and the reason why she's nervous now is I absolutely scared the hell out of her.
I wish she was lying.
She was curious, she was careful to have her boyfriend,
Yeah.
who's about as big as me and about as wide as this table, there with her, but he's actually a really nice guy. But I told her, I said, I've told people before, you don't want to interview me. So then we decided, rather than call it an interview, we would just call it something friendly.
It's a conversational piece, Billy, isn't it? Conversational piece.
I don't know, I've never done one.
We're gonna have a try. Walter likes me, don't you, Walter? Should be on.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Is it on?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I like you. You're quite wonderful. Let's start with the best thing first. Phil Murphy, get up here.
He's hiding around the corner. Get up here, Phil.
Okay. There may be no other moment when all of us are gathered together in front of Phil where we have the opportunity to give him a standing ovation. See, Billy and I have been to a lot of shows. I mean, a lot of shows. They're coming out of ears. We've been to so many shows. And this is a really nice show. A very nice show. You guys have made this a very nice show. You guys are an expression of the culture of the times. The show is an expression of the culture of the times. It's interesting that historically, decades from now, they're going to view this whole era as being the birth cradle of video game playing. What we're doing, we are the founders of gaming. We are the first generation of gaming. We are the ones who started it all. It's our generation, and we're still here and still alive. And future generations are going to appreciate us and look back on what we did and respect what we did and write stories about what we did, because it's a big deal, because gaming is bigger than sports, bigger than movies, and bigger than music. It's just the biggest phenomenal entertainment modality that's out there, and we're the ones who brought it to life, who embraced it, who believed in it, and brought it into the next generation. So we're still here, and we are the ones who founded this whole phenomenon. So it's really incredible that there are events like this that are brought to life as a labor of love. Because Phil is not doing this to make money, I can tell you that. He's doing this because it's a labor of love, and you guys are like a family. So anyway, be appreciative of the fact that we are a family, and it's a very, very big family, because we've been to a lot of shows and we've seen a lot of groups of people, and they all have this commonality, these common factors in common, of tremendous devotion and tremendous intelligence and creativity, all directed at supporting our amazing gaming culture and our legacy. So anyway, Phil, thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. You've actually just touched on where I was going to start off there, Walter, with where your passion came from, and it's a question to both of you, where your passion for video gaming came from, where the passion for arcades came from, and what got you hooked to start with.
I was an oil executive. I actually worked in the oil spot market in Houston, and I was making deals between Conoco and Tenneco and Shell Oil and Exxon Oil, and it wasn't going too well. So I got involved in making a book called Days Who's Who in the petroleum industry. It was actually Who's Who. And I had an investor, and the investor and I would work on the book every day. Then one night he says, I can't do this anymore. I can't look at any more oil executives' biographies. I got to go play Space Invaders. And I had never heard of Space Invaders because I'd never been in an arcade before. My eyebrows went up, and he took me to a big arcade in Houston that night. And I fell in love with Space Invaders. And that led to a love affair with Pac-Man and Centipede and Berserk and what have you. I just loved video games so much that I started playing them till 2 in the morning on about 3 different nights per week. So it really became quite a habit in a sense. And out of that grew the desire to own my own arcade. So I used to go on the road and sell old newspapers. Believe it or not, I actually sold, as a traveling salesman, old newspapers. I'm talking about old newspapers from like 1805, in the year 1650. They were antiquarian bookseller kind of things. And I would sell them to history teachers, to schools, to collectors. And wherever I went, I was able to get in the news on TV and radio and newspaper a lot. And quite often I'd have those TV stations meet me in an arcade, and between playing Pac-Man, I'd get interviewed by newspapers or magazines or TV stations. And I did that. Well, while doing that and traveling the nation, the United States, I started going to as many arcades as I could, and I became fascinated by the high scores that I found on each game. And I would write them down and start logging them. until I had quite a backlog of scores that would reflect the highest score I saw in this game or the highest score I saw in that game. And so the seed for the Twin Galaxies National Scoreboard was already planted in my awareness. But I still had the desire to open up an arcade. So in September of 1981, I started working on an arcade, and on November 10th, 1981, I opened up an arcade in Ottumwa, Iowa, and it was called Twin Galaxies. 3 months later, someone got a high score on Defender. And when I called Williams Electronics to try and find out if this was the world record, I discovered that they didn't know because no one was keeping track of the records. So I called 6 more manufacturers and 2 magazines and asked them about high scores. All of them said, we don't know. No one's keeping track of the records. So I thought about that overnight, and I called them all back and said, look, we have a scoreboard here. We're keeping track of the scores for you. And for some strange reason of karma, all these manufacturers and all these magazines all said, that's wonderful. And they all accepted us immediately as the scorekeeper. Overnight, literally overnight, Twin Galaxies became the official scorekeeper for the whole world of video game playing, which made us the crossroads of video game playing. And the world's most, at that time, the world's most famous arcade. So Twin Galaxies had Life magazine come there and do that famous, you've seen this famous photograph of everybody posing in the street with the video games?
It's just on the bottom of the banner here, all the time.
Oh yeah, here it is, right behind us. That famous photograph there, that was November of 1982. Twin Galaxies was not even 1 year old yet, and we had Life magazine come. And then a famous TV show called That's Incredible came and did history's first Essential World Championship. And then the governor of Iowa came and proclaimed us the video game capital of the world. So it started out just as a labor of love, and miracles and magic can happen when you truly love what you do. But that wasn't the end. That was only the beginning.
We do these talks a lot. And you'll ask Walter a question, and he'll tell you the truth. And then I'll give you the real answer. As he has said many times in his writing and in his book, he opened an arcade because owning an arcade gave him the excuse to play video games more and more and more and more. He also said that he played video games, he played them a lot. He wanted to get really, really, really good because he wanted all the pretty girls to say, oh my God, you're so good. And they would run up to him and show him attention just like whoever is best at whatever sport, Messi or whoever. So what he told you was true. And like I say, I'll always give you the real answer. But as for myself, just as a kid, I used to be a hardcore pinball player because that's what my dad had in his place. Video games weren't really a thing. Eventually Pong came in. But I was playing video games, or not playing video games yet, I was playing pinball, and I mean intensely for 6 and 8 and 10 hours. As much time as I could spend at the machine before I got chased away. And as video games came out, by looking at me, you'd never guess that I don't embrace change very easily. You know, I tend to stick with what I know. And so I didn't want to play video games. But everybody was leaving pinball, and all the competition was going over to video games. You know, there was this big yellow cabinet in the center of the arcades that you couldn't even get to. So basically, against what I wanted to do, but for the sake of competition, I went over and began playing video games. And then, because of the intensity, the desire to be good, and the truth is, because I lived where the world's largest arcade was, and it was open 24 hours a day, every day of the year, and because I had friends who were really good too, I got really, really, really good. I had to play really good to stay ahead of them. That's why I give credit to the competition that was around me, because it drove me forward. And as Walter said, I started calling around. I was on Donkey Kong, And I says, I mean, imagine the measly score was 287,000 points. And I just says, man, nobody can beat that score. Nobody. Nobody. I called Nintendo. And Nintendo said they couldn't help me. And I says, well, what's the highest score? They go, we don't know. And the lady goes, probably like 150,000. And I go, well, I just got 287,000. And I heard her in the office say, this guy on the phone just got 287,000. And I heard everybody in the office go, whoa. But again, they didn't have an answer. They told me to call the distributor, a local distributor in the area, which was a joke, because when I called the distributor, he says, we don't know about that, son. We just collect quarters, you know what I mean? Which is all they did. And finally, somebody found in Joystick magazine where there was a scoreboard printed, and I contacted Joystick magazine. It was on a Saturday, so they weren't open. But being ingenious and stubborn, I'm calling directory assistance. I see the editor's name. I actually got him at his house. And I mean, I think about that today, that's like obnoxious. But he's familiar with his magazine, he's familiar with the back page, and he was familiar with the phone number to the scoreboard. And I called, and that's the first time that I ever spoke. And it wasn't to him, it was to the Pat who worked for him. And I said what my score was. By then it was higher. It was from 287 it went to 397 to 597, and then in one night it went 763 to 886, the first kill screen. And I told him about it, and he talked about the Gathering of Life magazine, which is the history's first esport event. And I went to that event, but imagine you walk into an event like that, there were international players even. You walk in and you look around and you have to feel the so-called fear. You wonder if you belong there. You wonder if you've overstepped your bounds. I mean, absolutely. I mean, these guys were incredible. But on Saturday evening, the night before the photo, I played the guy who claimed to be the best at Donkey Kong, his buddy. Now he played first, he got 190,000. And in 1982, you get 190,000 on Donkey Kong, you would turn every head in the arcade, you would absolutely be the center of attention, without a doubt. And then it was time for him to sit down, so to speak, and I took my turn. And I got 849,000 on my first guy. And I went to the kill screen. And without a doubt, it was that exact moment that launched me into competitive gaming. I mean, it was a fever, a passion, higher and higher, better and better. You know, I started traveling around the state to different arcades. I remember we went to the World's Fair, and every time we stopped somewhere, I got out of the car and I ran around, I had to see what scores there were on the machines. And for lack of a better term, the guys who were in those photos, you know, most of them were decent guys, but figuratively speaking, those guys took their talent after the event and they just went home. And, you know, God bless them, that's the choice they made. And you might say that I made a different choice. You might say that I didn't really go home the way they did. So when I have the good fortune I have, when I've seen what I've seen and achieved what I've achieved, that's what I attribute it to. It began there, and the fact that I pursued it. Because there's guys in that photo who were really good, and they were good enough to compete, certainly on a level with me. There were guys that I admired, but I don't know that they had it within them to never, ever, ever, ever miss an event. I never missed. Some of these guys were at an event, sometimes they weren't. I never missed. I mean, the old saying is, you know, you're never gonna win if you're not there when the wheel goes round. And I was always there. So that's why I had the good fortune I had. Not just because I had the good fortune of being good at gaming. Level of stubbornness, good fortune, good luck, good support. But I was always, always, always there. You know, the guy who plays a particular sport and never misses a training, never misses a practice, has an outrageous advantage over those who do.
Is it like, I'm saying that I don't even need the microphone that loud anyway. You touched on something there with the want to be better and the want to be the best. Was it like an adrenaline rush when it was kicking in as well? That's something that I know we spoke yesterday about wrestling and things. That's something in the wrestling community that I always say it's like the worst drug of choice you can ever have, is that adrenaline rush when you know that you're the best and you know that even if people are trying and trying and trying, you're still a little bit above. Is that something that always sort of hit as well?
Well, one comment before Billy comments on that is that I was 32 years old when I opened up Twin Galaxies. And I used to play till 2 in the morning with a 15-year-old. I don't know what they were doing up that late, but essentially I would compete with the very young people till 2 in the morning because of the adrenaline rush, because it was so much fun. It was one of the happiest periods of my life when I first opened up Twin Galaxies and just played video games until my brains boiled out my ears. So
we've all been there, Walter. We've all been there.
I think some of them are still there. So even when we come to these events, even though I don't play games anymore, when we come to these events, invariably, is there a Wizard of War here? No? Because Billy and I always traditionally play doubles Wizard of War every event we go to. And I'll play a couple. There's a Centipede here, isn't there? Anybody ever play Centipede? Okay, so I used to get almost 700,000 on it. So I was reasonably good. So I like to play a couple of games of Centipede. But the game I was the world champion on was Make Tracks. Anybody ever play Make Tracks? It's a pretty hard game. It's just a paint roller going around the maze. Anybody remember it?
See it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, what's interesting is that when Williams Electronics came out with it's also called Crush Roller, if you know Crush Roller. So when Williams Electronics came out with it, they were excited because they thought it was their answer to Pac-Man. And they were absolutely convinced internally in their company that they were going to blow Pac-Man out of the water. and they attribute the failure of it to one single executive inside that company who they believe that because he mishandled the rollout of the game, that it didn't become the next Pac-Man and beat Pac-Man in sales and popularity. Of course, that's completely unfair because Crush Roller and Pac-Man are worlds apart as far as quality, even though Make Tracks is a very, very good game. Billy.
You asked about adrenaline, and that's absolutely the truth. I think if you find yourself, I don't know how you could, but I get asked this all the time, you have an adrenaline because you're playing against other people. To me, that's absurd. I don't even understand the question. The adrenaline from what's going on within you, can you beat, can you achieve, can you surpass what you already did? Can you better yourself? You know, that's a constant adrenaline. And back then, there were no computers to speak of. When you wanted to see what was beyond a certain level, you had to play there, you had to get there. It was always fascinating. Okay, I never been to this board. What's going to happen? And everybody's standing behind you and they want to see what happens. It was history making itself right in front of you. But one of the things I said, we had the world's largest arcade. It was open 24 hours a day, and the guys were really good. And each person, that competitive nature, caused others to get better and better and better. There's one guy in this room right now who's bashful, so I won't say his name, and I won't even look at him. He has told me that he eventually got the scores he got on Pac-Man because of me, because of what he saw, because of what he knew he could do. He was really good, and now he's not really good. He's absolutely on top. And in order to compete, in order to get better and better and better, not at this, but at everything I've ever done in my life, you always have to play against the people that are the very best. If you're not playing something and you're not uncomfortable, okay, if you don't have a level of fear within yourself, you're not living up to your potential. If you don't have a level of discomfort in your life at whatever you're doing, you're not living to your potential. You're just taking what you have to in order to get there. Well, gaming is the same way. If you're not being frustrated, if you're not failing and failing and failing, okay, then you're never going to succeed. You absolutely have to embrace your failure. It's through your failure that you'll find the path to success. If it was right in front of you, there'd be 100 or 1,000 people in front of you, and it's not. And again, gaming is no different than every aspect of life. Regardless of what it is you're trying to do, regardless of what it is you're trying to achieve, if you're not willing to accept failure along the way, you'll never be able to grasp in your mind what's needed for success and then achieve it. Anybody who said, oh, I did this and I did that and I never had any failure, okay, they're either lying to you or they never had the success. They never had the success at the end. So the different players that you play against, the different players that you're friendly with, let's face it, the different players that you beat up on, each one of you is a compliment to each other.
We're having some right microphone issues.
It's working. Oh, we're back. So, yeah, everything that you said, I don't know anybody else in here, but a lot of what you said there actually resonated with how I've been feeling most of the morning. And it is that fear and that, like, feeling like you're overwhelmed and feeling like you're not going to be able to do something. And, yeah, it does give you that buzz when it's starting to fall into place. So I 100% get that. You guys actually covered most of my fluffy questions, parts of our conversational that we're having in what you guys said. And I think the wealth of knowledge that you've got and the experience that's come behind you has just resonated in everything that you said. A lot of guys that are coming up now in gaming, especially in the industry that we're in now, where everything's online, everything's recorded online, everything's seen online, it's very, very different to where you guys started. Is there any advice that is transposable for what you achieved, both of you, for what you achieved back then, as opposed to how gaming is now?
Well, first of all, I want to bring out an interesting point. You see the guys that are in the photo that was just held up? The 16 people who were photographed on November 7th, 1982. Well, they were representative of the spirit of esports back in 1982. All those kids completely believed that professional, competitive esports was going to happen in their time as youngsters, and they were ready to embrace it. It's what they looked forward to, it's what they wanted to do, it's what they believed in, and they had no doubts that esports would someday be a mainstream sport that young people would involve themselves in. But the problem that they faced was they were born like 2 generations too early. So when people talk about esports dawning in this modern era, esports actually dawned way back in the early 80s. For instance, have you ever been in an arcade when you were a kid, or even recently, when someone is really good at a game and you see a crowd gather around them and they're the whole center of the arcade and everybody's gathered around them watching their score go higher and higher and higher as people watch in awed amazement? Well, what we're watching there is the spirit of spectator sport. There are many, many esports people who think, oh, the spirit of the spectator sport of esports is a modern phenomenon. No, it's always been there. From the very beginning, when the first quarters were put in games, people were in awe of excellence in video game playing, and crowds of people would gather around whoever is putting on a show on a game, because people were prepared and excited to be spectators watching excellence in video game playing. And if the technology had been available through the internet, and people could have streamed Billy Mitchell playing as Pac-Man or Billy Mitchell playing Donkey Kong, 50,000 other arcades would have signed up and would have been online watching it. Because spectator sports, the spirit of spectator sports is not a new thing, even though the young people in today's esports environment believe that, oh, this is something modern, something new, something we invented. No, it's always been around. It's always been a part of just the culture and the psychology of video game playing. So these youngsters believed in the esports just as fervently as the modern people do. It's just that they were born too early. And it's too bad, because many of them regret not having had the chance to become esports superstars, because they were all just as good, if not even better, than many of the stars who play today. Because the games, these golden age games that we all have in our game show here, the actual structure of the games is more demanding and more challenging than most of the games that are being designed today. It takes a higher level of skill set to master an old game than it is to master a modern game. A modern game, you can become a complete expert at it with only so many hours of practice and play and instruction and learning tips from other people. But there are many of these old games from the early 1980s that even today, people are logging newer, higher scores. That's because they've learned even more about the functionality of the game and figured out even more. Because when these games were made, they were made with layers of intelligence. And people, through experimentation, 1 quarter at a time, would figure out the laws of nature of the game. And even today, some of the games are so complex, they're still figuring out more laws of nature, which manifest as higher and higher scores.
Yeah, that was good. Now I'll tell you the real story.
It was great.
Those 18 guys there. 16, he's right. Now he's paying attention. They were in the photo. The photo was in Life magazine, and then there were individual photos down below in front of whatever game it was they were particularly good at. You would notice there were 2 guys in the photos down below that are not in the photo here. And everyone wants to know why. So I'll give you some history that's not written anywhere. We're all about that age. We're all out of town. We're all amongst people of our own liking. And the arcade closes. 2 of the guys never showed up for the photo the next morning because they got absolutely snookered. And they never got out of bed. One guy drove from Edmonton, Canada. The other guy drove from Montana. They drove all that way to miss the photo.
They were sleep drunk on someone's kitchen floor.
Yeah. Like I said, for me, you'll get the real story.
Here, let me share something fun.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize I was done. I'll sit down.
You'll be back. There'll be more of Billy in a moment, after the word from our sponsor. Okay, here's a question, a challenging question for all of you. When Twin Galaxies opened up, on that very first day, the man running the taxi cab company came in from across the street and said, "We don't know what's going on, but just about the time that you opened up, we lost radio transmission with all our cabs whenever they come downtown Ottumwa, Iowa. We think it's you." And I said, "No, it couldn't be us. Who's ever heard of that happening with an arcade?" And he was insistent that it was us. And then he came back upset a little later, because it's still going on. And just as he's arguing with me about this, the police come in just to check out the new arcade to see what kind of place it's going to be and if it's going to be a problem for the police. And they overhear our conversation, and they scratch their head and say, "Well, wait a minute. Our patrol cars are also having trouble with radio transmission. And it's been going on today, and we don't know what's going on, what's happening. They can't communicate with police headquarters. And just at that moment, believe it or not, a man from the fire department comes in looking for the police officers, and he hears the conversation. He says, well, we're having the same problem. Our fire transmissions, from the fire department aren't getting through to the cars and stuff like that. So, and so they're all looking angrily at me, and I can't believe this is happening, because whoever heard of this happening with an arcade? Well, anyway, through experimentation, turning off banks of games, one after the other, we finally narrow it down to one single game that's causing this phenomenon. Who can guess what game that was?
Donkey Kong.
Just on the spin.
Oh, Donkey Kong causes far worse problems.
Cakes.
Okay.
Cakes.
Who guessed that?
A few of them over there, well, there are a few of them over there.
Amazing.
It's Kix. QIX. We took that game out, that one single game, and the problem completely went away. Isn't that amazing? Who's a technician? Who can explain why that happened? Anyway,
It's electromagnetic interference.
Frequencies.
it's easy for you to say.
Frequencies.
Ladies and gentlemen, Holland. Okay, here's another story for you. I got thrown out of 3 arcades. Can you guess why I got thrown out?
Too good.
Too good.
No, this is actually revealing of the condition of the times. It's early 1982, and the boom of video games was so big, and people were making so much money that doctors and lawyers and dentists were seeing the cash flow in the arcades that were already set up, and they were deciding to form partnerships and open up competing arcades. So when I went into arcades, traveling around, because we're trying to open up a chain of arcades, so I'd go into all these different arcades all around the area of Illinois, Missouri, and Iowa. Everybody hear of those 3 states? Oh, okay. Essentially, I would go in, and I'd be curious about what their business plan is and how they're laid out and everything, and I'd start counting their games. And suddenly I'd find myself surrounded by their arcade attendants, and they'd say, I'm sorry, sir, you're not allowed to count the games. You're going to have to leave. And they would throw me out for counting the games. And the whole premise behind that is that me in there counting the games means that I'm like a lead runner for potential competitors who's in there checking them out, determining how strong their business plan is, so that we can move in with a rival arcade and take away their incredible success. So isn't that amazing? And that was the way the spirit of the competition was at that time, early 1982, because the amount of money being made by each arcade was so huge that it was an incredible allure to further businessmen from joining in and competing and causing problems for the arcades that were already there in existence.
Well, I don't know what the question was I was going to answer when you took over. He goes back like 10 minutes.
I've lost myself as well. Yeah, it was. Have you got any advice for the guys who are coming up and doing online gaming and hitting high scores? Is there any transposable advice coming from where you did to where the guys are now?
Okay, to speak of the guys in the photo, I won't lie to you, there's a couple guys that didn't belong there. But without a doubt, those guys were absolutely the sharpest knives in the drawer. You could have put them in a round room, and they could have put a penny in a corner. I mean, they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And some of them, it still shows in what it is they do today. It was really interesting because back then, video games, the ones you have out there was one goal. The game was manufactured, and the goal was to take your money in less than a minute. And most of the time it worked. Just not for me. But the goal was to take your money, and in a minute you had to put in another quarter. and another one another quarter. The games were really difficult compared to the games in Japan. There are still arcades in Japan like there was in the US in the 80s because they're much more family oriented. The games are not set as difficult. It's more of a Chuck E. Cheese atmosphere. It's more of a family atmosphere. So those arcades were less cutthroat. So more arcades survive in Japan than they do, say, in the United States. Arcade games in Japan still make money. They still make enough, manufacture enough games to sell them to cover the cost of making the games. They don't in the United States. They make their way to the United States because in Japan they've already created the game. All they have to do is translate it now, and then they'll sell it in the US. Unfortunately, if in Japan they stop being profitable, then they'll stop being made. And then we'll only have what's out there. But with that in mind, the games were set more difficult, I say in the US, in North America. They were set more difficult. For example, in 1984, 3 guys went to Japan to play against Japan's best 3 guys in track and field. It was 1984, the year of the Olympics. And I would have thought back then, stereotyping, which I'm sure is wrong, I would have thought, man, those guys are going to go over there and they're going to get killed. No, the US guys, they won first, second, third. They hammered the 3 Japanese. Not because they were better, but because the games were set more difficult. Because they were set more difficult, it forced the 3 Americans to play harder to get better. They had to endure the pain in order to get better. They got better because they were challenged greater. The Japanese players didn't get as good simply because they weren't challenged. Goes back to what we said. Going to the games of yesterday, that they had one goal, was to take your money in 1 minute and make you put more money in. That's not what games are today. You play a game at home, okay, you've bought the game, they've already made the money off you, they're gonna make off you. You put the game in, the game goes, it goes on, it's a story, it continues. I mean, some games kind of like never end. They just go and go and go. I mean, you pause it, you save it, you know, all the silly things I see my son do. So it's not comparing apples to apples. People ask me what modern games I play. None. What modern systems do you have? 0. They say, why? I say, because I'm not going to play anything my son can beat me at, and he'd hammer me at every one of them. And that's the absolute truth. But by the same token, you're not comparing apples to apples. It's easy to say, and I believe it's true, that the players from the past are far better. It's not because they're actually better, it's because they're put in an environment that allows them to get better and succeed.
Somewhat hampered by the technology that is the never-ending game now, the eternal loop of open world.
Now, if you're gonna play a game, an arcade game, there are so many advantages you have now. For example, it's 1983, and I want to try something on a split screen that I think will work. I got to play 5 hours to get to the split screen. I played 5 hours, I got there, it didn't work. Damn it. I got to put a quarter in, and I got to play 5 more hours to get there again. Now you don't. Now you go online. First of all, you can look at somebody who's already figured it out for you. But then you want to see if you can do it yourself. You go online, and you simply play it online. You don't have to play 5 hours. So there's a lot of things that could improve any one of your games at any game out there if you go online and you use that technology in order to focus in on that exact strategy or that exact challenge that you're facing. So it's kind of funny, I hate to say it, because it makes you sound old. You know, you say, well, you guys had no idea what we had to go through. I mean, I feel like I'm from World War II or something. But the truth is, it was that much more difficult then. Technology makes it better and easier now. The technology can make it better and easier now, and they can make it easier for you to be sluggish, to take things for granted, to not maximize your potential, and therefore it works against you. It can also cause you to focus on it, do it, address it exactly as you're supposed to, take advantage of the technology in order to get that much better, that much quicker.
Speaking of technology, we're losing with these microphones today, aren't we? Yeah, I remember back to the days of, we had a TV show over here called Games Master. I don't know if you guys had anything similar in the US, where it was a big talking head. Did you ever watch Power Rangers?
Is she talking about Cartoon Network?
No, no, I'm not going down that route, no. Yeah, it was a talking head in the sky, and they used to give cheats, and you used to have to wait for any games to come out for the cheats to be on TV.
Cartoon.
And that it wasn't a cartoon. It was Patrick Moore.
I think she missed the joke completely.
No, I didn't. I got it. That's why I'm avoiding it completely. We're not.
So we go back to the fear factor from last week.
Yes, I am coming back to that conversation though. So, we are gonna talk a little bit controversy now, if that's okay. I'm asking if it's okay. I know it's not, so I'm going to keep my head down and look at the desk. So, long and short of it is, since we announced that you guys were joining us at NERG, we were inundated, and Phil can back me up with this, and so can Kev. We were inundated with messages, both personal and on the page, and a lot of them were, are you sure you want to do his interview? He's going to sue you. Are you sure you want to do this? He's going to sue you. If you say anything he doesn't like, he's just going to walk off. He's going to go in a huff. He's going to sue you. And that is something that, and honestly, the amount of comments was unbelievable. It is obviously a different era now. It's a different world now. We see a lot happening on social media. You don't have social media, Billy, do you? How do you cope with those type of comments? Do you still get those, and from the general public, wherever you go?
The amount of times I get them from the general public where I go, collectively, totally, when I add them all up, grand total of 0. Never does somebody come up to me with a comment like that. It comes from the 45-year-old guy who lives in his mother's basement, who smells, and he's a social media knucklehead who doesn't do any self-thought of his own. And I can't help somebody like that. But you're right, I don't see that because I don't handle social media. And not that I don't have some, but my son handles it and my wife handles it. And when there's something important like what you're talking about, and Phil, then yes, of course we address it. But for the person who simply reads what is written from anybody who writes it without any credentials or backup and whatever, and chooses to believe it, you know, a wise man once said, men will choose what they believe. There's nothing I can do to help those people. Nothing. And she liked this story that I told her last night, but you know, if you take 100% of the people who watched, say, the movie King of Kong, 99.9% of those people, they find it interesting or not. They find it intriguing or stupid. They find it fun or boring. It's an emotion that most everyone, I'm sure there's one exception in this room, I'm looking for him. Okay, it's an emotion that every one of us has at any movie. But when you deal with the people on the fringe, there's nothing I can do to help those people. For example, I get love letters, I get flowers, I get marriage proposals, I get hate mail, I get death threats. I've had the FBI involved 3 times. There's nothing I can do to help those people. They had a situation and a challenge in them long before they ever saw me or watched the movie. You know, my humor is, well, you know, it was a movie and my job was to play the antagonist. If I walked in and brought chocolates, it would have been a lousy movie and you guys wouldn't be talking about it now. Okay, I'm not too proud to tell you, the movie King of Kong became what it is because of me. And so if I didn't do what I'm supposed to do, if I didn't partake in the movie that you saw, if I chose to ignore it, fluff it, not try to succeed with it, then the fun I had for 2 years traveling, filming, places we went to, including London, the adventure, the money I got that put our kids through college, I wouldn't get any of that. You know, sometimes I'm a wise guy and I pick on somebody like you. And I say, so you walk in a movie and you see Arnold Schwarzenegger on screen. Do you think when he walks out of the theater, he starts shooting people in the street? I mean, like, really, that's just like, but I don't ever come across somebody, ever. I haven't met one unpleasant person at this show. But, I mean, I haven't. And if I wanted to look at it online, I could see it all day long. I could make comments and challenge people all day long. It would suck up all of my time. I mean, there's no, it has nothing to do with this when I say, there's no end to the negativity if you choose to find it. None. But by the same token, there's not a day in my life for many, many years now, including here, that I don't walk in the street and people don't come up to me and say hi. And I've never had a negative encounter. One of two things, like I say, those people stay tucked in the basement, you know, not working on their hygiene. Or maybe they're really out there and they just don't have, you know, the gumption to come up and talk to you. They certainly don't have the gumption to come up and ask you a question. So the way that I handle it is relatively easy. It doesn't come in my face. And the challenge that I have, that we shared, was when somebody says, oh, will you come on my podcast? Well, they want me to go on the podcast because they want me to whip up the drama like I do on the various things you've seen on the screen. Well, I mean, I can do that, but they want to portray that as reality. And whether you love the antagonist or you hate the antagonist that you saw in the film is really immaterial. The person that I truly am, day in and day out of my life, is the guy you see at the show. And believe me, I can sit here and scare the hell out of you.
Did yesterday, like legit.
And, but I said to her, I go, what kind of interview do you want? Because we can do anything, we can have fun.
Yeah.
I know Walter wanted to come.
Would you like to comment on that one, Walter?
I think Billy said it all.
It is very much that, and everybody, it doesn't matter what movie you watch, everybody loves a good bad guy. Everybody loves, we call it heel. Everybody loves a good heel, and it is that persona, and it's that person that you see there, that's the driving force behind everything else that's happening on screen. Doesn't matter what the good guys up to, doesn't make a difference. Everybody's focused on that negativity. But the assumption was put there that you weren't happy with the way it was filmed and the way you were portrayed. But again,
Whoa.
assumptions.
Here's an example. Whoa. The assumption was put there by who? Did you hear me say that?
Nope, not at all.
Well, let me ask, did you see like a newscast or something where you saw me say that?
Not at all.
Is there a credible source you can cite that you have trust in that told you that?
Not at
So
all.
why don't you ask a question rather than make a statement?
That's exactly it. But this is the thing. It's the assumption that, and it's people talking online. It's what we were just saying there about social media and the drumming up of the drama, and the people are desperate for something to be more than it is a lot of the time, and that's what they feed on.
Well, many people have said to me, like just somebody in the audience later would say, well, you know, it's more fun to be bad than good. I've had people say, you know, ask the average person, you know, name somebody in Star Wars, they're gonna say Darth Vader. Okay, nobody's gonna say Princess Leia. They're just not gonna, because
I'd say Princess Leia.
Where's all the attention? Where's the focal point? Where's the person you want to know what they're going to do?
How many people have seen The King of Kong?
How many people know?
How many people have seen Chasing Ghosts?
How many people have seen that?
Everybody should see that. That's just as good.
How many people have seen that?
How many people have seen Man vs. Snake? That's good too.
How many people have seen that?
Okay, be aware that a fourth one is being made right now. And it comes out, I believe, at the Sundance Film Festival in January.
How many people have seen none of those movies? I haven't seen any one. I don't watch anything that I'm in. I just don't.
Who's got a question?
No, not finished yet. Hold on to your horses. So, again, we're going to hit assumptions and we're going to hit speculation here for this one, if you don't mind, Billy. So,
Do I have a choice?
no, not really. Yes, of course you do. You can choose not to answer. We're going to talk about videotapes. So I know we spoke about this yesterday, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that sit and say, well, I know, and this isn't me talking, I know,
Sounds like you talk.
it is me talking, I know that you submitted videotapes with your high scores on, and they were discredited, and you lost everything. That is what's said online. Not from a credible source, but that is how it's put across. When the high scores were recorded back in the day, and obviously with what Walter was doing, how was that process recorded? How was that submitted as a high score?
The rules at the time were, let's go back to the initial rules in 1983, the summer of 83, when Guinness World Records first accepted scores from Walter for the Guinness Book. You couldn't submit a score, you couldn't do anything. You had to play the game in a tournament setting at an approved location, or it didn't count. It didn't matter what you did. So you could go to Twin Galaxies, of course, any time, but there were two major time periods, January and July, the Masters tournament, and what's the other one called? Coronation Day, where everybody would sit there and try to put scores in, because Guinness only wanted them under those stringent rules, because they talked about the authenticity of scores. I mean, joysticks, buttons, all types of environmental issues. So, to go a little further, and you won't see this anywhere, every single score that was published of mine, for example, you'll see history's first kill screen on Donkey Kong, November 1982 at Life magazine. Now I'll give you the real truth. July 1982 was history's first kill screen, 886,900 points. I got it. But I got it in a local arcade. I didn't get it at Twin Galaxies. So that score wasn't submitted. Every single score I ever submitted was at a location and under observation. Not videotape one, ever. And so, they don't tell you that. The rules eventually changed, and if you had referees present, it was considered a valid score. There's no videotapes. Every single score I did had referees present. By the way, there was one score, there was one score that I didn't want submitted, but eventually did. Let's put that aside. So the videotape you're talking about was not any verification of my score. It's because somebody, or let's say Fun Spot, which has several referees, one of which was a Twin Galaxies employee, who set the machine up, who filmed everything. He filmed it as a favor to me. Just like a football player watches film over and over and over again to learn from themselves. That's what I had the tape for. The tape was not submitted as verification. Referees present on equipment. if that game in front spot, if that score is not correct, if that score is not valid, then the guy who got the second perfect Pac-Man score, his score is invalid too. And the guy who got the 5th perfect score, his score is invalid too. I mean, how far do you want to go? The thing is, they don't tell you that when they're throwing darts. I don't tell you that because I don't go on social media. I'm not going to sit here and throw darts, I'm simply going to win. But the videotapes that I've had for my own reasons, that I shared with my friends, those videotapes, 1, 2, 3, 4, they were stolen. They don't have the original tapes anymore. They have copies of the original. And in some cases, they don't even have copies. You didn't read that. They don't report that. But it's real. And you were getting ready to ask another question, and I interrupted you.
No, it's absolutely fine. I was just about to say, obviously, you mentioned the referees and things that have been there. These high scores you have hit time and time again, and there's been witnesses there, yet there is still people that discount it and say that you've been cheating. Why do you think it's still such a controversial thing? Why do you think you're still getting so much heat about cheating when there's so many people there witnessing what you're doing?
The organization that originally began this has made several $1 million. Follow the money. Several million, including a big scandal that's being investigated into with a bunch of investors. Okay? It might sound funny that there's money involved. But the truth is, the joke is, I'll sit here and I'll play online, and some people will sit here and watch me. And I'll hit a score that I hit before. I'll hit a score that I was told I couldn't hit. And not only is it online, but it's at an event, like at 4 quarters. And somebody will make the comments they make. And then somebody who's a little smarter will say, geez, what do you want the guy to do? Come and play at your home? There are some people who will never, ever, ever be satisfied. They choose to hate, you know, or they do it just because they think they can aggravate people. And of course, they don't aggravate me. You know, Walter will be kind and he'll say, you know, some people have different mental illnesses, which of course they do. But the way I met Phil was in London in September. We needed a local guy to do us a favor, and he did. And we made arrangements for us to come to the show because we appreciate it. Well, the night before I left, I went to 4 quarters in Elephant Castle, where the gentleman from Guinness World Records, who we had met with earlier in the day, was going to meet us, but he ended up not being able to. So at 4 quarters, on their machine that they set up, okay, that they have locked, okay, I walked up and I hit start. And I played, and in front of him, I got a joke, I say, boy, you Brits know how to drink. And you don't have short glasses either. And the music's blaring, the lights going exactly the way I like it, and I hit a perfect score. And the hate mail that came into 4 quarters, and accusing them of cheating, or abetting somebody who's cheating, there's nothing I can do to help those people. Nothing. I did it at Galloping Ghost, the world's largest arcade. Arguably the most reputable guy going. His name is Doc Mack. And they accused him, some people did. They said, oh, you ran main through the machine so that he could get a perfect score. If they were to acknowledge anything positive now, it would mean that they were wrong in the past. And I mean, I'm human just like everybody here. It's not easy to admit when you make a mistake. It sucks. It actually feels a whole lot better when you acknowledge it, though. But there are certain people, every one of us knows. You know who I'm thinking of. There are certain people, no matter what, they will never, ever, ever, ever say, I made a mistake, or I was wrong, or I didn't know, or oh, I learned something, or oh, I wasn't aware. They will never, ever, ever backtrack 1 inch no matter what. They take a bullet first. There's nothing I can do to help those people. I mean, we go all the way back to 1982. All these things they talk about didn't exist. Some people made the mistake of choosing the exact kind, exact type, exact model of emulator they said was on those tapes. It was the 11th hour, like everything was exhausted, everyone's shaking their head, when somebody from that development community sent a message and says that can't be right, because that system that we created came out 2 years after those scores were submitted. They don't acknowledge anything, all they do is move the goalpost. There's nothing I can do to help those people. And if anybody can tell me anything, I'd like to know. Somebody will show me something on social media, and somebody, reasonably level-headed, will say, I don't understand, why doesn't this guy just go somewhere and play and do it again? Okay, I've done that. I've done it like 22 times. But that person's unaware, God bless them, they don't get caught up in the grief. It doesn't matter if I do it again. I will do it again many, many times. You're right, it's not going to change. And I don't care if somebody doesn't like it. I don't care if somebody doesn't like me, because I can't help them. I don't care what they have to say about me. No, it doesn't hurt my feelings, because the struggle is not within me, it's within them. Okay? When it comes to gaming, their opinions are their opinions, and there's nothing for me to do to try to correct it. But what happens now is their opinions go outside of gaming into outrageous claims that nobody here should ever be subjected to, ever. And I'm obviously somebody who knows how to fight back. And so that's where they get uncomfortable. I do know how to fight back. But I'm never going to fight back because somebody says, oh, I don't like him, he was mean. Oh, I don't like him, he was mean to Steve. You know?
You've actually led me into where we're heading to next, which is probably the darkest,
that's it. Blame it on me.
darkest part of the conversation. So, guys, I apologise. It is about, we're going to be talking about quite a sensitive subject next, so I do apologise if it offends or upsets anybody. It's something that we are going to we're going to go down that rabbit hole a little bit. Billy, I'm sorry. I am sorry.
You don't sound sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to stare at my phone
I have
again.
no idea what.
I have no idea what she's going to say. She said to me yesterday, she goes, we can go over the questions. I go, no, we can't. I said, you just let her rip.
Do it, yeah, do it. So, again, it comes down to perception being reality. There's a lot that is said about you online. A lot of people who have made money from dropping your name, from putting videos up, mentioning you, and it's something that is ongoing. So I know there's things that we can't really talk about with regards to some of it. The lawsuits that, again, as was said to me 6 or 7 times, don't upset me, I'll sue you. That is,
Whoa.
yeah,
Whoa. Lawsuits.
yeah, lawsuits. You've got 76
you
of them, haven't you?
You just like say them so vaguely. Why don't you see if you can name?
Yes. So, oh, you're putting us on the spot now.
Okay, are we talking about video games here?
No. Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
So why don't you tell me about the video game lawsuits that you talk about?
That's exactly it. Is there
I'm
any?
ready.
No.
There's one lawsuit related to video games, and it's defamation.
Yeah.
And whether it was video games or something else, it's defamation. Okay? It doesn't say video game lawsuit. That sounds great on the headline though. So,
Yeah. That is it, though. It is that headline grabbing.
lawsuits.
Lawsuits. All of the lawsuits.
Go
All
ahead.
of them. But this is the point, though. It's speculation online of the fact that you do have lots of lawsuits out there. That's never been the case.
Correct.
It's never been the case.
Right.
So we know
But somebody online says it, so you believe it.
that's perception is reality. That's what it comes back to. And it's not a case that, and I'm sure that most people in here are bright enough to look beyond just that little caption that comes up on the bottom of someone's video that you know is only there to get your attention. And that's something that is ongoing at the moment. we'll we'll quickly touch on Apollo Legend, and then we'll move on to where that's going from there. So Apollo, unfortunately, did take his own life. It was something that was sensationalised. It's something that you were name dropped in, but not by Apollo, and that was never the case. So there was a lawsuit originally.
See, she did her homework on this one. I give her credit.
Yeah. So there was a lawsuit originally with Apollo regarding some of the video content that he'd shared where you were mentioned. That was settled, and that was all done and sorted. There was no money that changed hands in that case, and it was, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the videos that Apollo had put up were instructed to be taken down, which was followed. So when Apollo had taken his own life, there was a post that had gone up online, which I'm sure a number of people will have seen, or they'll have seen the back end of it. That's come from someone else. Again, resharing and speculation and pointing fingers, where your name was mentioned. Now, Apollo had released a statement before he did take his life, and you were not mentioned at that point at all, and his family have backed that up as well. So his family have said that there was no money changed hands and that everything with you guys had been set and sorted. Why, again, why do you think that is such a sticking point with some people, or do you believe that it's maybe just another case of throwing darts and hoping that something hits to get the notoriety for them?
Well, there's no end to the number of people who are uninformed. They may have heard that originally, and of course they're putting stock in that which they heard without any backup. And it may be that he said, no, I didn't have anything to do with it. He did name 2 YouTubers, unfortunately, that he said pushed him to have the courage to do what he did, which is a tragedy. Later, his family chimed in and said, no, it had nothing to do with Billy. No, there was no money changed hands, you're correct. To make a long story short, he reached out and contacted. Just to be clear, I never spoke to him. He spoke to my son or another friend. Everything went through them. But he said he thought he was lied to, which he was. He thought he was misled, which he was. He thought he was taken advantage of, which he was. And he named all those occasions, and he was so ridiculously honest. There's stuff he mentioned that he could not possibly know unless he was telling me the truth. So I believed he was telling me the truth. And he said he wanted his life to go on without this. And I believed he was telling me the truth. And so that's exactly what happened, what we agreed upon. He followed picture perfect. He never swayed anything, nor did we. And so when I got a phone call from a very, very, very large YouTuber saying that he had just posted a video with what he was going to do to himself, I mean, I frantically reached out, but I mean, I was hours late. But that's exactly what happened. He left the world of YouTube as he used to do it. That's what he said he wanted to do, and he did. He left that world of YouTube, and he went over to doing other stuff. But he still had conflicts with others that I don't know anything about. And, he's about the same age as my daughter, my son. I mean, I just felt bad for him. He was so honest, he could not possibly be lying, and so we had an agreement drawn up, and I think, well, I think he should pay the legal fees. He didn't have any money. He seemed like he was telling us, well, he should pay half. Didn't have any money, so I just said, all right, just really, good luck to you. And that's what my son wanted as well, and he's the one that did it. I mean, I can't express what a tragedy it is. And again, he was somebody with a lot of struggles in his life that he was trying to get past. And This is the first time I ever spoke about this. I mean, I'm really sorry that it happened. But he was so honest with me, he had to be sincere. So because he was sincere, I felt I had to be back.
Thank you very much. I know that really is me putting you on the spot and sort of trying to just get some clarity, because that is, the world that we live in is so full of hearsay, it's so full of he said, she said, and people making total blatant lies in some cases. There is currently a case that's still going through the court process with Carl Jobst, isn't there? And obviously that's something that every time there's a video that goes up with your name on, especially around the subject of Apollo or cheating, that gets views, that gets clicks, that gets people noticing it, and that makes those guys lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money in the background as well. We all know how Twitch and YouTube and everything work. I don't think there's a single person here that doesn't.
I give you credit, you've done your homework.
Yeah, I know what I'm talking about sometimes. Not often. Sometimes I know what I'm doing.
Okay. I'm the only arcade gamer that he streams about. He arguably gets more views off me than anybody. He said what he said, and he said it constantly, and I don't care. I mean, I couldn't give him 10 seconds worth of credibility. Nothing. Zero. Especially if you knew his background the way that I knew it, you wouldn't want anything to do with the guy. Okay, but time went on, and eventually, without a single source, except a now deleted post on Reddit, now deleted post, was his only source where he blamed me for taking the life of another human being and for what I did to him. And I said, that's it. What kind of person am I, even to my family, if I would allow someone to do that unanswered? And so you address it and you try to resolve it. But when somebody thinks they're in a different place and they think there's nothing you can do about it, and they think they can just laugh at you, you can either let them do that or you can pursue it. So we pursued it. The complaint actually says nothing, not a single word about video games. Nothing. But he has gone online and has led you to believe that it has to do with the allegations. And it doesn't. Okay? And it's proceeding. But here's what bothers me. You're the guy I pick on. He goes online. He does a video. He'll make, between the money he gets from YouTube, based upon the views, because I'm an extremely high view for him, along with the sponsorship, he'll get about $30,000 for a video. It's possible to get somebody in this room to lie for $30,000. It's not something we should do. But then you go on there and you say he's suing me again. He puts up nothing, no proof, anything that he's being sued again. Nothing. There is one complaint in there, and that's the original complaint. So when the attorney sends his attorney a letter and says, your client is fraudulently claiming that we filed a second and third lawsuit against him, you know, that is not right. It's called a letter of concern, okay? He starts a GoFundMe because the bad boy is suing him again. He needs money. And you are so silly, you hear what he says, and you donate money without any knowledge or any background. And the GoFundMe is at $150,000. $30,000 for the video. You give him $180,000 based upon a lie. What do you want me to tell you? I don't have an answer. You can get a lot of people to do a lot of things for $180,000. And let's just pretend that you think that I should go to those social media knuckleheads and talk to them or explain it to them or give them a reality check. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, I don't want nothing to do with those people. It's unbelievable to me that that many people are led in that direction. But I also got to tell you one more thing. The attorney told me, he says, every time somebody makes a statement, don't get upset. Remember, this is defamation. And every single statement, every single YouTuber who takes his video and reproduces it, which is a lot, every single one of them is a gift. In the end, it's a gift. Because he's wrong. He cannot possibly defend the fact that he said I took the life of a human being. And I'm not gonna let it go, no matter what.
Again, I think perception being the reality that it is, having the other side of that, because you have been so quiet on it and you have been so reserved in speaking up, in defending yourself. Because if, again, of course, why should you have to? It shouldn't be a necessity for you to go, well, actually, that's not what happened. But being able to get people to understand that side of it and not just believe everything that they see. How many people in here actually believe what they read on the or see on the news or read in the newspapers all of the time? Because it's very, very rarely 100%. In every single one of us in day-to-day life, there's a black and there's a white and there's that grey area in the middle. And most of us are living somewhere in that. Out to the crowd now. Right, so, Q&A.
If I can show one thing here.
Of course.
The source of the allegations that began with Donkey Kong came from one particular place, a particular person. Okay? And that person has been extremely angry. Walter's not as tough as me. Those accusations came as soon as he realized that he wasn't included in King of Kong and Chasing Ghosts. He just became so angry. He spent 10 years of his life doing things that were to the detriment of the people he thought got ahead of him. Well, I had told Guinness that I could beat the perfect score on Pac-Man. I did, I told them that. And they thought, wow. And they actually emailed back. And they said, we'd like you to do that, but we'd like you to do it at Namco's arcade. Well, I mean, it's Namco's game and I'm gonna do it at Namco's arcade. Who can cry? You know, you can't question that. I believe you, they did. So, as I went there to do it, as I prepared to do it, there was one guy, and he was a friend of mine since the 80s, who said, oh, I already did it, too late. And I just ignored him. He said it so many times on stream, everybody else was saying it, and they were all reporting it. And not only was it reported on streams, it was even posted on certain scoreboards. And he didn't. There's a few key secrets you have to know that nobody knows. Nobody. And he didn't know them. I never told him, I know you didn't do it, or don't say, I never said a word to him. We'd even be in the same circles at times. And he'd say hi, I'd say hi. You could see that our relationship was strained if you knew what you were looking for. Well, just the other day, or a month ago, he says, he sent this to me before he posted it online. He says, I'm making a public statement as some things have come to light. I claimed in the past that I got a perfect score on the anniversary edition of Pac-Man. This was a fabrication of a perfect score by that original guy who started all the Donkey Kong stuff. I agreed to do this, and I totally regret it. This fabrication was brought about to get back at Billy Mitchell, to suppress him from getting the first perfect score on the anniversary edition. I want to apologize to all my fans players, for going along with this. Please accept my apologies, sincerely, and he signed it. And he sent this to me before he posted it online. He sent it, and within, I'm gonna be accurate here, in less than a minute, I responded. I said, my respects to you, complete, total, unconditional forgiveness, complete, total, unconditional, forget, on my honor. I said, I make this statement to you only. I will not comment publicly. It's gone. And he sent me a thumbs up. And almost 3 hours later, he said, sorry, Bill. And within a minute, I said, there's no sorry amongst friends. I knew it already. You knew I knew it already. And now you've put it to rest. You and I are good, very good, thumbs up. And he said, thanks. And then a few hours later, my son, who was overseas, he called me. He says, make sure you respond positively, all that kind of stuff. And I told him that I already did. So I sent him, I said, my son called from overseas. He was impressed, said to extend all of his respects to you. He is very grateful, thank you. And he sent a thumbs up. Now this is a guy that I knew since the 80s. And like I said, I could not have been more disappointed when he did it. He did it, you might say, under the pressure of the other guy. And now, 2 years later, he's come out with the truth, which I knew the truth already. How does that guy who pressured him into it, how does he not get called to the carpet for all of the allegations he made? He doesn't answer to any of it. When collectively you have an agenda, when collectively you have an animosity, when collectively you want to suppress an individual, he kept saying, I already did it, I already did it, as if he was going to discourage me from getting it or trying it. And he couldn't do it, he didn't know the secrets. But I didn't want to go down that alley. So that was him, that was his confession, that's the way I handled it. Unfortunately, I've been hanging around him too much. But that's the way I handled it. And it feels so damn good to just let it go.
Cathartic release, I believe it's called. Right, coming out into the crowd. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Oh, coming over here first. Oh, got shoes on, you know. Nobody's taking my shoes off by this point.
See, the first question always comes from somebody that you kind of know, and I mean that sincerely. And then others start to get more comfortable.
Which is your favourite ghost on Pac-Man and why?
Casper.
So I flew in from Miami, drove up from London, was here 3 days, and that's the best you got. My favorite ghost is the red one, because he's the meanest.
Next question. Oh, up here. We'll try and get around as many as I can, guys. And then we'll have a quick couple of minutes break, Phil, if that's all right, before we start Walters, yeah?
Billy, I wanted to just dig into something you've been saying about Pac-Man and getting the first perfect score and working on the end screen. You said it took 5 hours, try something, you've got to do it again. Can you just talk us through that sort of race? Were you aware other people were going for it? Were you aware how close people were? Did you have to practice in secret? How did it come about getting that score?
Well, everything that I did in the world of Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, I say I. I stands for me and my friend Chris. Each one of us is responsible for the other one being this good. The knowledge to get the perfect Pac-Man, the actual score and what it took, because there's crazy things, there's invisible dots, there's things that disappear and reappear. That knowledge came in 1983, and we told nobody except Walter. Over the years, there were people who called and said, that they got a perfect score. They didn't know what the score was. They didn't know how to go about it, anything. Over the years, once in a while, Walter would call me and say, some guy on the phone says da 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 da. And I said, okay, put him on. He'd put him on, I'd hammer the guy with a few questions and just blast him. I mean, BS. And one day, in 1998, Walter called, and he had two guys on the phone from Canada who claimed that they had the knowledge and ability to do a perfect score. Now you gotta realize we had the knowledge to do this since 1983, and we're sitting on our hands. We didn't do it. We just like, haha, we know how to do it. And I always had this idea that we do it in some grand fashion, not just do it. So that was my excuse, which was nothing but an excuse. Well, we're on the phone with those two Canadian fellas, and I fired a half a dozen questions at them that nobody has the answer to, including Walter, none. And he fired back an answer on every one of them, exactly as I would answer them. And that's when I said to Walter, I says, yeah, I says, these guys are for real. And there began the race for the perfect Pac-Man. The aggravation, the anger I had within myself, that I had sat on my hands all them years, and now it was gonna slip past me because I sat on my hands. And so that was 1998, 99. I started playing, and I hadn't played since at least 1987. So I started playing, and everything's rusty. But I could not get past the final screen, as you say. And I got to go to the bowling alley at the time. And I got to play all the way up there. It's 5 hours, and I finally get up there. And I go, how am I gonna complete this screen without dying? Because you can't get past it. But you got to get every dot. You die before you get them, because it's not anything normal if you've seen it. And then finally I looked at it and I go, if I go right here, I think they'll get trapped. And literally like 2 or 3 days before I did the perfect score, I did that, and I learned how to trap the guys, something that most Pac-Man players use now. And that made that board so easy. Any one of you could do it here. I'll show it to you one time, you could do the board. And so there's a certain amount of luck. But without lying, if that luck hadn't come my way, I would have found another way. It would have taken longer. But it was so aggravating. I was so angry at myself that I allowed time to pass.
Is it not crazy, like, returning to something like that over a decade later,
Yeah.
thinking, like, why am I doing this again?
Yeah.
You know?
Every time I stopped playing, 1987 to go again in 99, I stopped playing games in 2010 to start again in 2018. It's like, am I really going to do this again? So, and now it's worse, because now I'm on stream, and I meet different friends. Well, now I've made friends. I'm just going to cut the computer off, say the heck with them. So now you've made friends, so now you look forward to going on stream and saying hi to the friends that you've made. So it's like getting harder to quit.
Is that adrenaline? I'm telling you, it's the adrenaline every time. Kicks in, and the other cut up the back again. I'm going to take my shoes off shortly. This is ridiculous.
Hi, Billy. If you could time travel back to 83 and meet your younger self, what advice would you give?
To get a haircut. No, I'm just kidding. No, my hair was shorter back then. I won't lie to you, I would take this passion, this obsession, this drive to be the best, and I would have addressed it in different areas. There's different people I see that are so outrageously successful, and I had that exact ambition within me, She'll be really mad at me, but like the desire to obtain and hold the ultimate level of education for the profession that you want to do, I mean, it was absolutely admirable to see my wife do that. When I met her, she had 2 masters, and she said, I want to get my PhD. And I said, PhD? Man, that's scary just to say it. It was like dirty letters. And to sit there and watch her with that same passion, a passion that I have. So that means I could have done that. Why didn't I do that? Yeah, there's things that I missed out on. But you only have one life to live, and you know, you can't do everything. But that's probably what I admire the most as I look back on things, was to watch her achieve that and apply it. So I just hope she doesn't disown me for talking.
So you don't really like that?
He's a good guy.
I'm saying nothing.
He's the good guy.
Still scares us. Any other questions? Oh, we've got lots of hands this time. Come here first and then I'll go along the line.
I just wanted to ask you about the some of the footage that's shown on Chasing Ghosts when you were a youngster taking those photographs. You had a strange bruise on your neck. I just wondered which of those cheerleaders actually gave you that bruise.
Well, I could point to one in this room who did, but it wouldn't be true because I hadn't met her. But it was actually a bruise.
Really?
It really was. If it was something else at 17 years old, I would have remembered it. I might have even bragged about it. More trivia, because I'll tell you the real story. Author says, be brief. The cheerleaders at the bottom. This one, second from your left, she's come to events before. The one on the very left, seen her twice. The other three we've never seen again. Howsoever, the two on the outside are wearing a different uniform than the one in the middle. Why? Ain't no prizes. The one in the middle is basketball cheerleader, the other four are football. Not that it matters.
All right, I'm coming along this side. I'm going to try and squeeze in between. It's a hard job when you've got a bum as big as mine. So,
Billy, obviously you've achieved the perfect Pac-Man, which very few people have achieved, and you've also done the Kill Suit and Donkey Kong. What would you say takes the most investment to actually achieve? What's the sort of the pinnacle, would you say, out of these two challenges?
Without a doubt, the pinnacle of my illustrious fun and career was when I was flown to Tokyo, Japan. I was on stage with Masaya Nakamoto, the founder of Namco, who they call the father of Pac-Man, and all of the honor that he bestowed upon me. And to tell you a further truth, I mean, that was incredible to be on that stage at the Tokyo Game Show. There's like 200,000 people go to that show, and picture me amongst all of the fellow Japanese. I mean, I felt like, back in the day, I felt like I was Hulk Hogan. And the honor that they gave me was incredible. But even greater than that, something that I never spoke of until many, many years later, when they spoke of it, I felt comfortable to speak of it, was when I was there prior to all that, when I was there on my second day, and I'm seated in a room with a great big long table. And I'm just sitting here like, gee, I wonder what's going on. And Masaya Nakamoto walked in with 9 people, his inner core of programmers and marketers, and they sat across from me, and we talked back and forth. And no, believe me, I don't care what you see on TV, nobody in Japan speaks English. The girl at the hotel desk and an interpreter, that was all. And it started with me. Oh my God, I'm sitting here and I said to him, I said, there's not a kid in the world that ever played video games that wouldn't want to be right here, right now. And I told him, I said, I met you 17 years ago. And I told him where. I mean, I just met him, like, bumped into him, remember, in New Orleans. And he was shocked. And that picture went on Replay magazine, so he told everyone to get the picture. But I thought, gee, I got them right here, right in front of me. So I said, listen, at the end of Pac-Man, when the game runs out of memory, we think it does, and the split screen does this, and it does that mean this, and does that mean that? And the translator gives it, and they all go back and forth, they're all talking, and he comes back and he goes, Mr. Mitchell, we have no idea. You know far more about Pac-Man than we know. And I guess I should have paid attention because I asked another question. Basically the same question in a different manner. And it went back and forth, back and forth. Mr. Mitchell, we have no idea. We never thought scores like this possible. And I said, oh, I thought they had like some golden nugget that explained everything. So then they had a question. And then I sat there for 2 hours fielding their questions. And it dawned on me. I was absolutely fascinated sitting in front of them. But from their expressions and their questions, they were fascinated at the questions they were asking me and the answers I was given. So the answer is Japan, and the generic answer I give is on stage. But even more so was that meeting in the room, because it was so personal. Absolutely touching.
Any more questions? Oh, right here. I'm going to come sit down beside you.
You don't have to, I can hold it for you. No, that's cool.
So, does this work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, so I have a question in my head that I'm going to try and extract, but it may not make much sense.
Good luck.
So, okay. So firstly, can I ask, do you watch speedruns?
No,
You don't watch speedruns, but you know what they are.
I mostly do, yeah.
Right. So you have like a famous trick in Pac-Man where you do a combination on a certain screen where you go round and round and you can go through a ghost, I think at the centre point, where you can actually just pass through as Pac-Man. So obviously you learned that in 80, whatever year, through practice with your mate and all that stuff. But with modern, people analyse, how a video game runs at 60 frames a second on average on an arcade. So people have now pinpointed where, say you might have 5 frames of that second, like 5/60th, no sorry, you know what I mean, 5 of 60 frames.
I think what you're saying is transition screens.
Well, not so much that, the 5 frames that you get that window to input a certain command or to perform something, how that's analysed now in like a speed run, they'll say, oh well, to beat this boss you have 1 frame of 60 seconds to get this thing, so it's analysed. So someone out there could probably take your, say, knowledge of this invincible run through the ghost and analyse that and say, that is because, like the Namco people didn't know at the time, but now someone could probably do that and say, well, because you did this, and you timed it precisely there, this happens, and then you can recreate. So then 2 questions from that. Firstly, do you know that data, or is it more of just the feeling that you know what to do to bring it about? And secondly, if someone could tell you it, would you want to know, or would you rather keep it like analog as a magical thing rather than the hard?
Well, I think people have told me it.
Right.
It doesn't apply very much, and what I mean is, when you play, everything comes down to 1/60th of a second.
Yeah.
When you're running that pattern and you go through that guy,
Yeah.
if your timing or your execution is off by 1/60th of a second or more, then you're dead.
Exactly.
So it takes perfect corners. I used to say that if you do a perfect game all the way through to the end, you're taking 21,000 perfect corners.
Yeah.
That's not quite the way to describe it, but what you're saying is true. It's just, it sounds a whole lot more complicated the way you said it.
Yeah.
In the end, everything comes down to timing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? I think we've got time for maybe 2 more. That one, and then I'll come over to you as well. I'll come along. I'll squeeze along.
So you've been in Newcastle for like 3 days, and I was just wondering if there's anywhere that, like in USA, that it reminds you of, and have you tried a parmo yet?
A parmo. Have you come across? We were talking about food yesterday, and very, very bad chicken wings. So parmo is chicken with cheese and stuff. It's not for me. I don't think.
It's like a pizza.
Yeah.
Instead of bread, it's chicken, and there's like a thick sauce between it. And you get
She's going to have it and she'll let me know how it is.
It's not for me. I'm not a fan of parmos.
Well, going back to your question though, I mean, like you guys don't know anything about air conditioning. Nothing. I mean, it isn't just to make it cooler, it's to make the air like more comfortable. And then you get a water or a soda, they don't put ice in it. You say, can I have ice please? And they give you 1 cube. I say, can I have a lot of ice? You gave me 2 cubes. I mean, yeah, so now what I do is I order a cup of ice so I can do my own thing.
It's the easiest option. Right, there was a question over here. Who was you? Oh, perfect.
You don't. I didn't hear of a parmo until I moved up here, so don't feel so bad. You're not really missing out. Obviously, you said you started on pinball, and obviously the climate changed, so you moved on to video games, and that drive to be the best. So if it wasn't video games, it likely would have been pinball. If not pinball and say video games didn't take off in the way it did, if it stayed very small, do you think there would have been something else that you would have been driven to be the best at? And if so, what is that?
Yeah, I played football, the real football. No, I did play your football, I just wasn't so good at it. But I played basketball, I played baseball. I could really, really rifle the ball. I could. And again, I was really good at football. I was lightning fast. The only proof I have of that is my son is even faster. So, again, being competitive, I had those things in mind. Without lying, life comes down to choices. And I just chose a different path. If I didn't have that path to choose, then I would have chosen one of these. I'm quite confident whatever I did, for better or worse, and hopefully for better, I would have been extremely good at it because I'm just demanding of myself, and I want to push it to a higher and a higher and a higher and a higher limit. If I can make a fool of myself here, when we used to play games, it wasn't today where you can go on a computer and you can just zip up to some certain level. You had to play Popeye and you wanted to see what happened after level 100. And then what happened at 101 and 102 and 103, where nobody had ever gone before. It was really cool. That adrenaline doesn't exist today because of computers. And we used to look at it as, it was kind of like being an astronaut. You're going somewhere. You're doing something that nobody has ever done. And that was like a grab or an adrenaline. Well, I would have wanted to feel that way about whatever I did, whether it was sports or something else. So when I stopped playing video games, like around 1986, because I realized I couldn't just do that forever. I became so obsessive and passionate in the restaurant business, so obsessive and passionate that I could make chicken wings, which were our main item, and hot sauce, and different variations, and that I could do it better than anyone in the world. And so I simply took the passion and the adrenaline that I had from video games, and I pointed it in a new direction in life. So that's how gaming and what I learned in gaming came to benefit me so much. I wanted to be the absolute best father, the absolute best husband. I wanted to be the best, the best, the best. And believe me, I can tell you stories. I didn't get everything right, but it's just what was within me.
So while you mentioned it there, well, you touched on it just before we finish up. You do have some bottles of your very, very best hot sauce downstairs, don't you?
No, I don't.
No.
No, I gave them away.
Did you? Has he been holding out on me with hot sauce?
Yeah, well...
Mate, thought we were friends.
Well, it's sort of a loaded question. Okay, a little bit of bad guy here. Guy comes on the stream. Maybe you were there, you saw it, or you. He's just an unhappy guy. Billy, how come your hot sauce is so weak? And I says, I go, well, maybe you don't know what you're talking about. I says, there's cayenne sauce, which is cayenne's a hot pepper, but not hot. There's jalapeno, there's habanero, there's ghost pepper. Which one did you try? He didn't have an answer. And I go, you probably tried the cayenne, that's the most common. But where'd you get it? Come on, where'd you get it? People on the stream are saying, hey guy, where'd you get it? I got it at the supermarket. Oh, okay, that's cool. Well, what supermarket did you get at? The local supermarket. You know, it's a type thing. Okay, that's cool. Where do you live? I live in New York. It's funny, it's not sold anywhere in New York. Why don't you try telling me, talk to me straight here. What's your problem? You know? F you! And then she bans them. That's the ban button over there. So I have fun with that, but, so who's the best video game player? It's like, who's the best football player? What's the best hot sauce? It's all very subjective as to what you're looking for. One of them is. The one he has down there is cayenne pepper, because I heard you guys were softies when it came to hot sauce. I heard you don't even call it hot sauce, you call it chili sauce.
And then they pour it all over kebab meat, which is like a horse's leg.
But in reality, we put, that's the most common one. Not only is the most common, meaning that we sell, it's the cayenne pepper is the most sold pepper in the world. And so that's the sauce that has the NERG label on it. So.
Can I just ask what's your favourite of your sauces?
The cayenne sauce, because it makes the most money. I would say the ghost pepper, because I get to charge the most for it, but I don't sell much of it. Oh, that's a good point, ghost peppers. Yeah. Hey, you should be up here cracking these jokes. And just as when the show opened, if you saw, I stand at the door and I greet everybody who comes in, if you guys remember that. Okay, man, I'm being too honest here, and that camera's rolling. But I sit there and I say, thank you for coming, I appreciate it, because I do. That's what I'm here for. And I do that, and I say to him, I go, I watch for that one person. There's usually one who, you know, you're going by, they're shaking hands. That one person who, when they walk in, they just go. So, I think there was one today. And that's okay. But I'm usually here, but I got here late, and I usually thank each person that comes in here to participate as well. And I wasn't here, so now I'm telling each one of you thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Massive personal thank you for not terrifying me as much as you did last night, Billy. And massive thanks to Walter as well. So we're going to have a quick 5-minute break, if that's all right, Walter. Is that okay with you? We'll